Hi, my name is Mark Daly, and I'm the Director of Training for Transformative Training. Today we're going to talk about how we manage conflict in intergenerational workforces. You know, there's a lot of conflict right now that's being talked about between millennials and Generation Z and baby boomers and traditionalists. We're going to go into this and we're going to talk about it. I want to start with doing some research, talking about the research that's out there, and then I want to show you really how personality style is used in order to manage conflict between these groups. Finally, I want to give you a really solid tool that you can use to actually manage the conflict in your teams. So this is really designed for managers and executives who are experiencing a lot of conflict based on this issue. And we're going to jump right into it. So conflict is a difference of opinion with strong emotions. That's all it is. So in this situation, we're talking about intergenerational conflict. The difference of opinion is based on different age. The ages of people, because they experience different things growing up, they have a different view of what the truth is, so there's a difference of opinion. But then the strong emotion comes in, and this is where the breakdowns come in for work groups, because when people have these strong emotions, either fear or joy or anger, right, or sadness, basically the four main ones, can really disrupt a work group by not being able to work through those emotions in a good way. So as always, our leadership trainings deal with emotional intelligence, and so that's going to be an undercurrent for this training as well. So our generational cohorts then, traditionalists go from 1900 to 1945, baby boomers go from 1946 to 1964, Generation X 1965 to 1980, and the millennials 1981 to 1994, Generation Z 1995 to present. So I don't know about you, but when we get together at Thanksgiving, right, we have all of these people present. We have all the generations there, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, the research sources that we have, we're going to start with the Pew Research Center. We're going to go to West Midland Family Center, the Gallup Research, Hay Group, IBM Smarter Workforce Institute, and we're going to start with the Pew Research Center. Pew Research Center, they have published a paper called Millennial Life, How Young Adulthood Today Compares with Prior Generations, and this was published this year, February 14th. It takes the IPEMS microdata describing 1.4 billion individuals. This is a very vast survey, and it's using 750 censuses and surveys. So they're crunching all this data, and they find that millennials are better educated, with women outpacing men in college completion. There's more racial and ethnic diversity, and it's the second largest in the U.S. electorate after the baby boomers. So this data then is very focused on the conclusions being demographic, right? So there are demographic issues at play. That's what we want to talk about. Then we go to the West Midland Family Center. Here is their generational differences chart. You can look it up yourself. And the generational differences chart then is used for comparing different aspects of each of these generational cohorts. It's just set up like a chart just this way, right? And so here's one of the chart pages here where we're talking about the attributes, and you'll notice when you look closely here, you'll see traditionalists are ethical, baby boomers are ethical, Generation X, hey, they're ethical. Millennials, well, they're confident, and gee, Generation Z, they're real go-getters. So we start to realize the limits of this kind of research, because this research looks to me to be very anecdotal. Someone is using these types of stereotypes to make assumptions and conclusions about these generational cohorts. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into how this works. So on this chart then, they have work ethic. That's one of the categories. So I've summarized what they've put down here for work ethic. Traditionalists, what are their views on work ethic? Well, they're dedicated. They pay your dues, work hard, and respect authority, right? So I want you to think about a traditionalist that you know. And think about these aspects. So I'll think about my mom. Okay, is she dedicated? Absolutely. Does she hold the attitude of pay your dues with regard to work? Yes. Does she work hard? Absolutely. Does she respect authority? Yes, she does respect authority. So I can start to think, wow, this is true. I know one person, and because I know one person, that makes it true for all the traditionalists. Are you tracking me on this, how this works? Let's go to the next one. Baby boomers, 1946, 1964. That's me, by the way. I was born in 1963. They're driven. Am I driven? Yeah. Workaholic, 60-hour work weeks. Well, you can talk to my first wife about that. I would say yes, I've definitely been workaholic in my life. Work long hours to establish self-worth and identity and fulfillment. Well, yeah, I did. I wanted to be an attorney. Be an attorney is self-worth established around an identity of being a lawyer, right? So did we work long hours in law school? Yes, I did. Quality. Am I committed to quality? Absolutely. I'm very much committed to quality. So this is true. This seems true. It's true. Okay. Now we'll go to Generation X. So I'm going to think about someone who I know, Generation X, well, that would be my current wife. And so she was born in 1968. So balance. Yes, she's very much into balance. Work smarter and with greater output, not work longer hours. That is true. She really has been a good source of support for me to do more of this, working smarter and with greater output, not working longer hours. Self-reliant, absolutely. She wants to be self-made. She wants to have her assets, she wants to have her investments, and she wants to be self-reliant, wants structure and direction. Yes, she likes to schedule in her free time, right? So that's must be true. Generation X, I know one person, must be true for everybody. Millennials, 1981 to 1994. Okay, so this would be my oldest daughter, Adriana. And so here we go with her. Ambitious. She is ambitious, yes. What's next? That's true. She's always looking around the corner to see what's next. She loves thinking about that. Multitasking, yes. She can keep all the irons in the fire much better than I can, that's for sure. Entrepreneurial, that is also true. She wants to start her own business. She likes to work with other people, connect that way in doing her in her marketing for her own company. That is the way we look at stereotypes and anecdotal data, is that we take the input, we think about one person, and we say, yes, we conclude it must be true, right? Moving forward, Gallup, Inc., 2016, How Millennials Want to Work and Live, the 6 Big Changes Leaders Have to Make. So the Gallup Daily Tracking Survey has been going since 2008, 1,000 U.S. adults each day, 350 days a year. So that's a massive long-term database there. The Gallup Panel, 75,000 panel members complete surveys via the web. Gallup's Q12 Employee Engagement Survey, 1996 to 2015, which is an amazing survey, by the way. 31 million respondents, 3.7 million work groups, 21 major industries. And then the Gallup Customer Engagement Survey in 2001 through 2015, 18.3 million respondents, 370 client organizations in 61 industries. So what do we get from Gallup? Well, they have 6 big takeaways regarding millennials in this paper. 1, millennials don't just work for a paycheck, they want a purpose. 2, millennials are not pursuing job satisfaction, they are pursuing development. 3, millennials don't want bosses, they want coaches. 4, millennials don't want annual reviews, they want ongoing conversations. 5, millennials don't want to fix their weaknesses, they want to develop their strengths, which ties into the Gallup product, the Strength Finders assessment, which is used in corporations to focus on people's strengths and get more productivity on teams by looking at people's strengths rather than looking at their weaknesses and trying to fix and manage them to improve the parts that they're not so strong in, right? It also ties into the concept of appreciative inquiry, which is a it's a thought process that groups can engage in to brainstorm and create new innovation and collaborate together as a team based on positive questions that we're asking one another. It's been found to be highly, highly effective. Cooper Ryder is the one who has brought this forward in the research and in the journals. And if you haven't heard about it, check it out. It's amazing. 6, it's not just my job, it's my life. Right? So these are the millennials. And the idea is that knowing this, then if you want to attract millennials in, you need to set up your workspace so that you're doing this, so that you are meeting these millennials where they want to be. So you don't just do annual reviews, you do ongoing conversations, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the Hay Group, we're going to bring in something here that's going to start to show the paradox involved in thinking about managing conflict between these generational cohorts. The Hay Group has a paper, Managing a Multi-Generational Workforce, the Myths versus the Realities. This is from 2011, so this is pretty recent as well. Now, they have assessments that they've done. This one's the Best Companies for Leaders questionnaire. It's a 2014 survey, included around 18,000 participants from 2,100 organizations. They also have an insight database. The past 5 years includes 5 million employee participants from across the world and their perceptions of their work environment. So this is also very revealing. And then finally, Organizational Climate Survey, 57,600 participants collected in the last 3 years. So what does this information tell us, this research? Well, we're talking about a myth here. Younger generations look to their leaders to provide meaning and purpose to their work. So we saw those types of attitudes reflected in the Gallup survey, but in the reality, engaging people in the purpose of the organization as an idea only emerges as being strongly valued in leaders by people over the age of 55, which at this point are not millennials. That are baby boomers and traditionalists. So the reality is that other people hold this idea of having leaders provide meaning and purpose to their work, as well as the younger generations. Interesting. Here's another one. A myth. Organizations need to use different approaches to retain the younger generations, and that a work-life balance is more important than career progression, right? So I mean, I think about my daughter, I think about my wife, I think about other generations. I've already proven this to be true because of my, what we call confirmation bias, right? I know someone, so it must be true for everybody. The reality, all generations cite the same 3 attributes as the primary reason for staying at their company. They are, 1, they want exciting and challenging work. 2, they want opportunities to advance. 3, they want autonomy and freedom. So this is something everybody agrees on, right? So that is the reality, and that also really is true in the work that I've done. I found this to be true. There are cross-generational truths around what people want out of their workplace. Okay, let's look at another myth here. Each generation needs to be managed differently in order to keep them engaged and motivated. Okay, so my mind starts to reel as a trainer, training managers. Can you imagine having to have a different management priority for each generation? I mean, that would be crazy. Thankfully, that's not even required. The research shows that there are really insignificant generational differences in expectations of organizations. So regarding these different aspects, all generations feel the same way. How they want to be managed, they want clarity, they want rewards, they want standards, they want responsibility, they want flexibility, and they want team commitment across the board. There's just a little dip going down to the millennials and then coming up again to the Generation X, Generation Z, but it's so insignificant when you look at it. So that is a great reality to hold on to, is that everybody wants the organization to really perform well in these areas. Now, this idea is even further demonstrated by the research of the IBM Smarter Workforce Institute. They have a paper, Generational Differences at Work Are Much Ado About Very Little, published in 2015, because there's so much out there around intergenerational differences, intergenerational conflict, and IBM says they've looked at their IBM Smarter Workforce database of employee engagement from over 33 million employees worldwide and 1.7 billion survey responses. It is a vast survey. And what they find, and this is a really academic-based research, academic researchers dispute that generation gaps matter or even exist in the workplace. So let that sit there. Just 0 to 2% of work attitude differences were attributable to generation. And when you dive into this database, you'll see, again, very tiny little shifts. Like the big picture, everyone basically wants the same thing. Their attitudes around work are similar. There's way more in common than separating people when it comes to workplace. Let's look at another one here. Generational generalizations can amount to socially sanctioned stereotyping or even discrimination. Think about that. If you walk around with the West Midland chart, the generational differences chart from 2017, and you say, I really need someone who's highly ethical, and I go, oh, well, I guess the millennials and the Generation Zs, sorry guys, I need someone who's ethical. That is a stereotyping, that is discrimination. But you know, it's one of the natural things that occur through creating this type of implicit bias around different generational cohorts that can be really damaging in an organization. And talk about conflict. If you're going to be managing conflict through that lens, you're going to be creating all kinds of different conflict in the way that you approach it. You're going to be making things worse in the workplace. Does that make sense? It does to me. Organizations can engage millennials the same way they engage Gen Xers and boomers, okay? And that is a real takeaway here that I think is interesting. Yes, there are some generational differences relating to age. We all have them. We have different experiences. Each person, as 56 years old, I've definitely experienced some things that my younger coworkers have not experienced. But when we're talking about managing conflict in a workplace between these groups, we have to start with an understanding that there is way more similarity in these age groups in terms of what they need from the workplace. What are their opinions on the way that they should be treated at work? Far more commonalities than differences. And those differences that come up, they are important because people are holding them. We know that. We know that people are holding these opinions and that they can get emotional about them. But we want to pull that apart in dealing with the managing of conflict from the content to say, this is how we're going to manage conflict. We're going to go and we're going to have to deal with the fact that our workplace is not really good with millennials. Like, throw that whole thing out. Just a little take here from us. Generational conflict is more likely to arise from errors of attribution and perception than from valid differences, right? So when we think about the other research databases, the Gallup one especially, that talks about what your company has to do in order to engage millennials, it's kind of sales. I think of it as a sales tactic to get people to use the strength finders, because in my opinion and what I've seen is that if we really narrow down the conversation to how do we fix our workplace in order to attract millennials, you are starting on the wrong foot right there. That is not the way you want to start this conversation. How do we start the conversation about creating a workplace that's going to be good for millennials and the new generation, the Generation Zs, and the new ones are coming up, while we also have older generational cohorts in the workplace? Here's how we do it. We treat it as an aspect of diversity. Here's our dimensions of diversity chart. We have in the middle of this chart personality. And so when we are wanting to manage conflict, our best tool to manage conflict between any diverse group is to talk about personality first. So the reason is because it is the central theme in human diversity, right? And it creates a foundation of trust to talk about diversity using the central theme as a foundational conversation. I'm going to go back to the chart here. You'll see in the personality, you see that's our core, and then outside of it is primary diversity. So age, gender, race, ethnicity, physical ability, sexual orientation. Yes, there are differences between people. There is a diversity of thought. There's a diversity of behaviors in a workplace on each one of these issues, right? But underneath it, within each one of those groups, people have different personality styles. Age, different personality styles. Race, ethnicity, physical ability. Yes, there's going to be some differences, but as a group, within that group, you still have personality style differences. And as you move out into the secondary and then the organizational realm, again, we can talk about differences of opinion with emotion based on personality style without the negative impact of creating stereotypes and discriminatory conversations and attitudes and feeding that fire when we talk about personality style. I want to go a little bit more into this though. We have the central theme in human diversity. It definitely does create a foundation of trust. Why is a foundation of trust important in organizations? Well, as we learned from Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Chris Argyris before him, foundation of trust. Lencioni talks about the idea of personality style and talking about differences as creating this foundation of trust because it can be vulnerable to talk about personality style. It creates authenticity to talk about your personality style. Now, some people don't like to be put into a box, and they don't want to talk about personality style. And personality style may not feel safe to talk about. And they're probably more comfortable talking about intergenerational conflict in terms of groups and using their West Midland Center chart, and stereotypes are more comfortable for a lot of people rather than getting vulnerable and talking about your challenges and strengths with relation to personality style. But as Lencioni has shown, and Argyris before him, and tons of research on this, when we have a conversation about personality style, it builds a foundation of trust because I know that you know your strengths. I know that you know your challenges. And when I know that you know about yourself, I feel that I can trust you. Very simple concept. From the foundation of trust, then the organization can start to engage in productive conflict. So here's where we go into the conflict management, creating productive conflict, because we do want to have differences of opinion. High-functioning teams that create amazing innovations engage in productive conflict. The word productive is very important, though. It's not destructive conflict where it's never resolved. It's about productive conflict where I can claim, well, here's my strength around my strengths in this conversation that I'm bringing here, and maybe I've got some blind spots that I don't really see, and so tell me your side of it. And that's how these productive conflicts lay themselves out in creating new ideas and including everybody in the conversation, which is also really important, especially using diverse groups. Commitment to team. When we have productive conflict, all of a sudden I'm feeling like, wow, I got a place here. My voice is respected, and I'm going to commit to the team. I'm going to commit to the goals, and I've been included in the conversation. We're going to make a decision, and I'm going to commit to it because I've had my say so, right? And there's buy-in around that. The next thing is accountability that occurs. Okay, we've just made a commitment. Now what happens when we don't do it? We're going to have an accountability conversation. How do we have accountability conversation? conversations? Well, they don't happen if there's no foundation of trust. They don't happen if you do not know how to have productive conflict. And if there's no commitment, you're definitely not going to go out of your way to have an accountability conversation, especially a positive accountability conversation. You might slam people in a backhanded way by gossiping about one another, but again, that is not going to really bring any kind of accountability. Where you want guardrails to the commitment to say, oh, we're getting off track here, we're getting off track here, let's keep it going, let's keep it moving forward, we made an agreement, where's the breakdown? Having those kind of conversations, very important. And then the final one is to focus on collective results. By focusing on collective results, we can quantify what we're doing, how it's working out, as well as keep 1, 2, or 3 ideas in terms of where we're heading in the conversation every day. We're going to focus the attention of the team, of the organization, on this result that we want to achieve. And some organizations are so good at this. I think of like Ritz-Carlton with their stand-ups and the way that every day they start the day by talking about the collective results. And they have an amazing track record of nailing their collective result, which is, over-the-top customer service and having a reputation for taking incredible care of their guests. And that is a universal outcome for any industry, for any company, for any organization, is that you can actually create those types of results if you focus everyone's attention on it in a positive way. So that's the Lencioni. How does this actually fall into place? Well, when I started out my work as a lawyer and I started my own company, I had done coaching with Tony Robbins, actually, and they had me do a DISC survey first thing. And this is like 1999. And I did the DISC survey and I learned about my personality style. And so this is not new. This is the same stuff because it works to build a foundation of trust. I learned how to have these conversations. And so when I started to build up my company and make my operations manual, I included them in my operations manual. You'll see, I have every person who worked for me do a professional and personal mission statement. So we would know where everyone wanted to go, what they wanted, what was important to them. And then we would also teach them active listening and feedback communications in this model. So that everyone who worked for me had to learn how to talk in this way. Just as a ground foundational way. We're going to talk to our clients in a way that is different from other law offices. Diversity trainings. Of course, we did diversity trainings. And then there was the DISC personality styles. Everyone had to do their tests. Everyone had to be conversational in DISC so that they could talk about the breakdowns and the challenges and their strengths through the lens of DISC personality style. It worked great. We did such an amazing job in that office. I built it up. I sold that law office. Then I started training other lawyers and working in the field of organizational development, communications, and leader development. And I've never looked back. It's been great. But the personality style-based communication, it creates a common language that everyone can use. It improves emotional intelligence. It is a quantum leap into emotional intelligence to be able to talk about your strengths and your challenges based on personality style. It improves coaching and mentoring effectiveness. It's true, people do want mentoring. I want to learn how to grow in my job. I need someone to show me how to do that. When we can talk about challenges and strengths relative to our personality style, it is incredibly empowering in doing that. And as a coach, because I've experienced, I learned it and I've been doing it ever since, it makes things objective. Anyone who is the same personality style as you would be feeling this way and probably experiences these types of challenges. Boom, it takes it off me having to take it personally. So it's a great tool for getting deep coaching and mentoring on an organization. So which personality style do we use? Well, we love the DISC. The DISC has 4 variables, D, I, S, and C. It's so simple. Also, because it's got only 4 variables, you can use it to quickly assess other people on your team, vendors, clients. It is a tool that not only allows you to discuss your own strengths and challenges competently and with a high level of emotional intelligence, but you can start to understand other people's emotional background based on personality style. So it's incredibly helpful that way. MBTI, which I love, which is such a great tool for learning about yourself, it doesn't have the same ability to assess other people and start to chart how to navigate and how to manage a conflict with someone else, because it's so difficult. 16 variables. Okay, I'm an ENFP, right? And you are an S, sensory, T, you're probably a thinking, like, what? I mean, I teach this stuff and it's still so hard to use, you know? It's really hard. I don't want to knock MBTI though, because Lencioni loves it. Lencioni, when he done his trainings, he has people do the MBTI and they can talk about their stuff with a deep degree of vulnerability and emotional intelligence. So it's great for that. But it can't be used easily, and if it's not used easily, it's not used. So people, in my experience, when we teach an MBTI class, it doesn't really have a lot of traction into the organization in terms of creating a cultural shift towards more emotional intelligence and engagement. Not the same way as the DISC. Strengths Finder, I mentioned that before. There's 4 basic groups, and they basically track the DISC 4 groups, but there's 34 different strengths, 34 different variables. So again, in terms of having a conversation about strengths and getting people into groups and talking about this and talking about that, it's awesome. But I mean, they show you your top 5. So let me see, can I remember my top 5? Let's see, I'm empathy, I've got woo, I remember woo. Woo is winning over others. Let's see, which other one did I have? Strategic was one. But again, it's like, and then you got 34, your top 10. You know, it's tough to use interpersonally day in and day out. So that's why we like the DISC, because you can have deep conversations about strengths and challenges based on DISC that are easier to have. And because they're easier to have, people are more likely to have them, which is what you want. So how do we do a DISC assessment? It's so easy. Right now, if you've got a piece of paper and you got a pen, I'd say take it out and show yourself how easy it is to actually do a DISC assessment. You draw a big plus sign. You go to the top. Fast-paced, decisive, bold, or you go to the bottom, methodical, think things through, and cautious. So because there's this continuum of being fast-paced or methodical, it's easy to assess. And then you can also use behavior to determine where you are on this. So fast-paced, how am I speaking? How do I think? What kind of conversations do I like to have? How do I move my body? These are all different aspects that you can observe in yourself and others to know where they fall on this continuum. So for me, I would put my dot up here because I am fast-paced and I'm not very methodical. And, you know, when I think about this and I can say, you know what, I'm not really methodical. I don't usually think things through. I like to make a decision and get on with it. Okay, I'm starting to get vulnerable about myself. I'm starting to talk about my challenges, what I'm challenged with. So it creates openings around that. Similarly, the other axis, the horizontal axis, is even more. Where do you focus? Do you focus on task or do you focus on relationship? You know, are you more skeptical, questioning, and challenging, or are you more warm, accepting, and open? Right? So for me, I'm definitely more warm, more accepting, and more open. And so I'm not skeptical about things. I don't question and challenge as much. So I would put my dot over here. And then you connect the 2 dots together and you're in a quadrant. And again, the 4 quadrants are dominant, influence, steadiness, and conscientious. So think about where you are right now. Look at your sheet, determine where you are. And there's a couple things about this. First of all, we are complex. People are complex. We don't have just one personality style all the time. Thankfully, we can adapt our styles to different situations, right? So that is key. I am not always warm, accepting, and open. I can be questioning. I can be challenging, especially in my work with teams, with groups. When it's okay to do that, I can challenge. I can question things. Definitely my work as a lawyer. as a manager, I can go there. I can definitely go there. But the thing is that I prefer to start with being warm and accepting before I put the hammer down. And that's just my style of doing it. And if I had to be in a job where I'm just skeptical and questioning all the time, I would burn out. So that's what's true. So even in practicing law, there are a lot of lawyers who are totally skeptical and challenging the whole time, and that's great, and they go down that thing, but then they don't have a lot of good client relation, right? So they fall on that. And me, I was just the opposite. I had great customer relationships. I long-term clients referring out, and then with the skeptical and questioning, actually drafting the briefs, creating a lot of the arguments. I had paralegals who were more dominant and conscientious to support me in that. I would work with other lawyers. I'd go to networking meetings, and I'd go and I'd find the CDs, and I would just pick their brain, and then train with them to get that kind of support. So that's how it works, Also, we are combinations of styles. So, if my dot were more towards skeptical and questioning, because I really am accepting, I'm deeply warm, deeply accepting person. If I was more skeptical, then I might be closer in towards the middle, and I might be a DI rather than a pure I. But on the assessments, I come up as a pure I. And so when you start to move, maybe I can sometimes do this, but I also do that, that's when you have a combination of styles. And so that's true for a lot of people. So now that you've got your style, let's look at the traits, the strengths and challenges, and I want you to write down on your paper one of the traits as a strength, and then one of the traits as a challenge for you, and to really get that present. So the strengths for the D: driven to get things done, deals with crisis and pressure, upfront and straightforward, willing to debate. Challenges: abrasive, likes to be right, lacks compassion, creates win-lose situations, motivated by results and achievement, and in conflict, they confront directly, they're competitive, and they like to be right. Influence, the strengths of the influence: empathetic, encourages open dialogue, provides reassurance, optimistic. Challenges: talks over others, glosses over the tension, too many balls in the air, easily distracted, takes things personally, motivated by positive energy and making a difference, of course, and conflict, use humor, wants to maintain good relationship, may get emotional and take things personally. Definitely I'm an I on that. Steadiness, strengths: flexible, compassionate, good listeners, communicates tactfully, loyalty and dedication. Challenges: conflict averse, avoids tension, gives in to please others, speaking up, lets issues linger. Motivated by harmony and positive relationships. And in conflict, we can be conflict avoidant, smooth things over, we can take things personally as well. And then the C, the conscientious. Strengths of conscientious: finding the root of the problem, focusing on facts, level-headed, gives others space. Challenges: defensive, hard to read or withdraw, passive-aggressive, overly critical, motivated by quality and precision. In conflict, needs time to get a rational perspective, might withdraw, doesn't like emotionally charged interactions. So for me as an I, knowing that the C is an opposite, literally on the opposite side of the chart, you have the C's and the I's that are opposites, and you have the D's and the S's that are opposites. A heads up, conflict and difference of opinion are going to be heightened with people who are on the opposite side of you. So just know that. And again, this is why personality style is such a great way to start conversations relating to conflict, because the emotions are going to be arising from the thoughts, and the actions are going to be arising from the emotions, and then the results will be arising from the actions. So these thoughts, these traits, these strengths, these challenges are the source of so many conflicts in teams, in organizations. And so if we can talk about them through the lens of personality style, it helps. And then when we move into conversations about differences in race, differences in age, and differences in gender issues, different opinions and emotions around all that stuff, we have a tool to talk about, well, I can see that you would feel that way based on your personality style and how you're communicating right now this breakdown, or that you don't want to deal with it, or that you got so many balls in the air. The meta conversation around the gender difference, the racial difference, the ethnic difference can be incredibly empowering, especially when you start to adapt your communication to others in order to have those conversations. I'm going to say that again. When you can adapt your communication styles to accommodate another personality style within the conversation around age, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, all right, you are going to create a basis of trust and an ability to come together and have really productive conversations around what to do with these issues. Does that make sense? You know, in giving this presentation, we were talking about the different ways in which organizations are trying to create diversity programs. And at some point, they're having tons of resistance around like white men not wanting to have uncomfortable conversations about their privilege and having really a hard time holding space and allowing different races, different ethnicities to speak their truth without being labeled a troublemaker, or you're just angry, or whatever that is. And so the conversation, in order to prime the pump on these conversations, when you have the tool of personality style, you can use it to get to the heart of the matter quicker. And that is a blessing. That is where you want to be in dealing with these types of conflicts. So with the intergenerational conflict, it might be something where you go, you know, Mark, I just wish he would send an email, or I would send me a text message. He always wants to call me and talk on the phone, or he wants to set up a meeting face to face, right? And I just think because he's an older dude, and that's what he's used to. And I just want him to come across, and I want him to, you know, start to talk to me in the ways that I like to be talked to, as you know, with my gadgets and with my different ways of communicating that are electronic. It's easier for me, right? So when I hear that, what I can say is, well, you know, I really, as an I like to connect. I'm relational. And I like to air things out, and I like to have a lot of back and forth, and I can't do that as well electronically. I don't get a sense for how things I'm saying are landing for you electronically. Now, it's great for moving data back and forth, and there's tons of conversations that we can have electronically that I'm cool with, but on some issues, I need to be able to talk in person in order to get a read on what's happening for you. So that's why I need to have this communication done in a different way. So we're going to go into the positive accountability, which is a communication tool. This communication tool of positive accountability acknowledges what's not working. It creates buy-in for taking positive action. It combines critical thinking with positive commitment, resulting in creative solutions. And it's based on appreciative inquiry, QBQ, which is a book by John Miller, and tribal leadership. Tribal leadership's another book, fantastic book, that talks about the studies that they've done regarding language and the effect of certain language in the workplace in terms of creating engagement, empowering teams. And so we're looking at language. Communication tools have been shown to be incredibly effective in taking teams where you want them to go. So this tool, communication tool, positive accountability, it starts with the disempowering question, because this is where we're at. We have implicit bias. We have automatic thoughts. We have intrusive thoughts that come in. And we're constantly judging people to stay safe. We're constantly judging, just in order to keep ourselves safe. It's a way that our brain works, right? So we're going to start with these types of disempowering questions and judgments of others, because that's where we're normally at. These are phrases that usually begin with a why, when, or a who, And they leverage blame and shame in order to change behavior. How many parents have ever used shame to change behavior? Yeah, it works for a little while. There's a huge impact, a negative impact. But you can shame, you can blame someone, you get someone to change the stuff. I mean, in the heat of the moment, we've all done it because it all works. So this is our humanity that we're working with now, these disempowering questions. They reflect a victim thinking and a lack of personal accountability. That's the problem. The impact is that we start to create a culture of victim thinking and lack of personal accountability when we're always talking in these ways that leverage blame and shame to change behavior. That's just what it is, right? But that's also what is happening so often. So we want to start with this. And then from the disempowering questions, you might say something like, why do we have to keep changing things at work? Who keeps filing those reports late? We have reports that are getting filed. Who keeps doing that? When was the last time we delivered on time? Everyone said we're going to deliver on time this time, and we didn't do it. When was the last time we actually delivered on time? And people put that into the room. They put that into the conversation, and it is disempowering. Do you get that? All right? Okay. So when we're doing positive accountability, it's usually around something that's important. It's a big issue, a big deal that you want to bring up in your organization. And so you want to prepare for this conversation. And so as part of the preparation, then you identify your disempowering question, which is kind of fun, actually, because you get to go big. Well, who keeps filing the reports late? And you bring up that anger, you bring up that victim, you bring it all up, you sit in it, okay, and then you change it. You change it to an empowering question. You do an intervention on yourself, a self-intervention. All right. But yes, it takes emotional intelligence to do this. But again, personality style can help you because you get into certain challenges over and over again, and you can change that by saying, identify your strength, identify the challenge. Oh. Then you create a question that starts with a what or a how. You add can I, and you end with a positive action that's data-driven. This is the formula for positive accountability. This is the formula you use before the meeting in order to create really awesome questions. I'll show you how that works. Here's one. I enjoy looking at the details. How can I help you get support to consistently meet the deadlines that you've agreed to? All right. So the first part, I enjoy looking at the details. What kind of personality style would be enjoying working at the details? It'd be the C. Here's a C. I enjoy looking at the details. Then, how can I help you get support? All right. How can I help you? When I ask that question, how can I help you? I'm taking a step towards accountability. I am starting to enter into a new agreement with you that requires me to hold myself and you accountable. So the accountability conversation starts right here. Now, you know, there are some groups that can't handle this. They're not ready yet. They don't have a foundation of trust. They don't know how to engage in productive conflict. You know, there's so many different levels here that you really need to have set up in order for teams to use this tool well. But when you've got that, this is a higher level communication tool. And when one person on the team starts to bring this in, it can shift a team away from the dominant victim thinking. Here's another one. I am committed to making a balance. No, I am committed to maintaining balance and increasing productivity on the team. Okay, who would that be? This is going to be an S, balance, right? Here's the question. What can I do to help resolve this breakdown and get everybody on the same page? And just let it sit. What can I do? And let it sit and listen. Start to go, okay, I can do that. No, I can't really do that, or that's not my responsibility, but this is one I will do. Okay, when can I do it? How can I do it? Who can I do it with? When can we follow up with that? You start to build the accountability around this new idea. It is appreciative inquiry and action. You're asking a question, it is positive, and then you're taking action to support it. Here's one. I have a big picture perspective on this. What can I do to quickly learn about delays on the project? So this would be me, the I. All right, I have a big picture perspective. I love the big picture. what can I do to quickly learn about delays on the project? And the reason why I'm talking about me and my strength is to model the conversation around strengths, right? It could easily go into challenge. You know, I have a hard time staying focused on small details. What can I do to quickly learn about delays on the project? It could go that way as well. Right? Because I'm being authentic, I'm being real about what I need and how I'm showing up in the conversation. So that's why we have that first statement. And then the person who's hearing you gets a read that you're being authentic. They get a read that you are being true and honest. Because everyone knows I have a big picture thinking. If you've interacted with me in a little bit, you know this already. So everyone knows one another's strengths and challenges naturally. So to state it, you make it explicit, you put it on the table, and then you start to work together to make a new agreement, hold one another accountable. It's brilliant. Teams that use this stuff really go well. It goes very well. I am feeling urgency and am driven to get something done quickly. Which one's that? That's the D. Here's your D. What can I do to support your team to meet the deadline? Right? That's a great one. So what can I do to support your team to meet the deadline? And then listen to what they say. Understand what they say. And you set a model of accountability in the conversation to occur. So it's a really, really powerful tool. Positive accountability. And so this is what we're talking about when we're talking about not focusing so much on intergenerational differences, you know, and focusing on strengths, focusing on personality style in these conversations in order to break through conflict, lay out the differences of opinion, deal with emotion that might come up, and then move forward into creating the next wave of innovation in your productivity, positivity in your company. So thanks for watching this video on managing conflict within an intergenerational I'm going to go back and do that one again. I'm feeling urgency and okay, here's another one. I'm feeling urgency and I'm driven to get something done quickly. What can I do to support your team to meet the deadline? Okay, which personality style would this be? I'm feeling urgency and I'm driven to get something done quickly. All right, that's a D. That's a D showing up as a D, owning their D, talking about their strengths, which are great, and then asking the question, what can I do to support your team to meet the deadline? That's it, you ask the question, you listen. Listen for the answer. So this again, this is an inquiry. It's appreciative inquiry. It is acknowledging the space that you can contribute in the conversation. It's supporting you to contribute, to collaborate, right? It's a very high functioning tool that will create a big shift in your organization when a lot of people start using it. Right? So it's a language-based intervention. And that's why we don't focus so much on intergenerational issues when we are working with conflict. We start by focusing on personality styles in order to level the playing field, in order to get people comfortable about talking about differences. Right? Then on top of that, if there is a conflict that comes in about the old dude who uses a nasty cell phone and who's never going to email and text, you know, and wants personal communications and wants to talk on the phone versus the younger person who just wants to do text, doesn't want to have meetings, doesn't see the value in that, then you can start to put the overlay of personality style. Well, what is your personality style? Oh, it makes sense that you would feel this way about that. What's your personality? Oh, I see. There's a difference there too. I can see where your opinion is sourced from your personality style, right? So in the company, we all believe in getting everyone's needs met. In certain situations, we're going to want to have personal meetings. And in other situations, we're going to want to put the data back and forth electronically. It all makes sense. If you have a preference one way or the other, we want to know why you prefer that. not based on the fact that I'm a millennial, not based on the fact that, oh, I'm a Generation Z and this is just what I want to do. That doesn't cut it. No. What's going on for you? What's the source of your emotion around it? What is your true opinion on this? And then you can start to build bridges by going, oh, it makes sense you'd feel that way because you are this personality style. Because again, the research shows that people want to be managed basically the same way. They want their workplace to offer them the same basic kinds of benefits, and the same type of management traits work for all different generations. And that's the takeaway on here. So hopefully now you see how personality style actually works in diffusing intergenerational conflict. So thank you so much for watching this video. Again, my name is Mark Daly. I'm the COO and Director of Training for Transformative Training. We create learning environments where people can come together and improve their communication skills and create more engagement, higher productivity, learn more collaborative ways of working together. And we work with teams, we work with leaders, we work with managers, we do executive coaching, help people break through, work on their challenges, work on their strengths through personality styles. So thank you so much for watching. And if you want to reach out for me, then you can come to my website. We have all the information on requesting proposals for our work. Hit request a proposal and we get your proposal within 24 hours. Thank you so much for watching.